And Eli Stokols is the White House correspondent for Politico. He joins us now. Okay, Eli, so Trump was promising more unity, but it appears the divide seems to be growing. What do you make of all this back and forth?
Well, it's really nothing new. I mean, everybody during the campaign said he's going to pivot at some point. And then collectively, we all realized there will be no pivot. It's exactly the same now that he's the president-elect, and will be the same once he's sworn in and becomes the 45th president. This is a man who has no ability to sort of rise above criticism, not to respond in kind and to swing back harder, to turn the other cheek, some would say to act presidential. Going after a civil rights icon like John Lewis, who might be the most respected member of Congress on the Hill across party lines for what he did during the civil rights movement. To do that as we go into the MLK holiday and now after the MLK holiday, not just to sort of attack John Lewis for the inauguration, but to go dig up some small hypocrisy about him not having attended the last Bush inauguration also, and to continue to beat this drum. It just says a lot about Donald Trump's inability to sort of look past even the smallest perceived slight. And I think it's something that we're going to see throughout the presidency. I mean, this is a guy who couldn't resist taking the bait and attacking the Gold Star family that attacked him at the convention. There really is no one out there, nothing that is sacrosanct in the world of Donald Trump. If you come at him, he's going to come back harder no matter who you are.
Eli, and yet the point that the president-elect was making is that John Lewis did not attend President George W. Bush's inauguration. Perhaps back then people were feeling, because of the recount situation in Florida, that they were going to take a stand when it comes to that. But I don't recall, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Eli, if any Republicans decided not to attend President Obama's inauguration back in 2008 because they felt as if he wasn't the legitimate president because of some of the things that Donald Trump himself had talked about, for example, the birther issue.
Right. We haven't heard of any. I don't know of any who skipped President Obama's inauguration 8 years ago. And, I think that we do have to fit this into a broader context and understand that we're talking about this as we discuss and debate the legitimacy of the president-elect, just as we did of the 43rd president after the presidency was essentially decided by a partisan decision of the Supreme Court. We're now looking at an election where we hear news of Russian hacking. We know that Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by around 3 million voters, and that Donald Trump's electoral college majority, even if he calls it a landslide, was fewer than 80,000 votes that helped him tip those 3 states that people expected would go to Hillary Clinton. So there are huge questions about the legitimacy of the president-elect, even though very few people but the most partisan Democrats dispute that he did win the electoral college. There are questions about Russian interference, and there are a lot of questions about his legitimacy and credibility coming into office. You look at his approval ratings being as low as they are. So I think that's what Donald Trump is really sensitive to, and that's why he's trying to fend off the stories, the questions related to the Russian interference, and why he's so up in arms over Lewis and others, deciding not to attend his inauguration, even though, that extends beyond members of Congress. You see very few artists and performers willing to come and play in Washington. There are huge protests expected. Trump sort of trying to tweet about that as well, talking about the bikers who are coming, trying to put his own spin on this. But it is going to be an inauguration this coming weekend, the likes of which we haven't seen in some time.
Eli, we know there's a number of confirmation hearings. We've got Education Secretary, Health and Human Services, even Interior. What are some of the hurdles that these folks will have to face?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Wondering what some of the hurdles are that these folks for the confirmation hearings will have to face.
Well, I think, it depends on the individual hearing, but a lot of these people who have yet to get in their ethical questionnaires and their financial forms, these hearings have been delayed. Right now, I talked a couple weeks ago before all these hearings began to one of the people who was helping prep a lot of these nominees. They felt really confident that all of them were going to get through, and I think as they've gone forward, we've seen, some of them hit some bumps, not just Rex Tillerson, the Secretary of State nominee, but the ones who we haven't even had their hearings yet, seeing the delays, seeing the questions about Pudser and whether he even stays or withdraws his nomination. I mean, there are a lot of questions, and this is sort of, as this goes through, related to ethical questions, financial conflicts of interest. And so I think right now we just don't know where the fireworks will come. One thing that does give a lot of these nominees some cover is the fact that Donald Trump attracts so much attention when he is tweeting and talking and giving interviews and taking positions that conflict with the positions on policy of Republican leadership on the Hill. Those become huge stories, and they do help to sort of divert our attention away from some of the more, spicy confirmation hearings that have been taking place and will continue to take place on the Hill.
Eli, you raised a good point. We showed a graphic to our audience there. There's a new poll out that shows that the president-elect will take office as the least popular president in 4 decades. His favorability rating right now is at 40%. Now, I want to put up a tweet from Donald Trump because he's going to respond on Twitter. And he said this: the same people who did the phony election polls and were so wrong are now doing approval rating polls. They are rigged just like before. I want to get your reaction to that.
Well, I mean, that's a message that a lot of people, the 37% or 40% of people who support Donald Trump, many of them will believe that these polls are rigged, that there aren't more of them who are supportive of the president-elect. But this is reality. Donald Trump, throughout the campaign, did struggle to ever get his positive number into the mid-40s, or much less 50. He won the election at the end because turnout was very low, and because he did have more appeal in a lot of those blue-collar states where Hillary Clinton neglected to campaign. And we can go through a lot of that. But, this is a very, unpopular incoming president-elect. Think back to 2008, Obama's incoming approval rating was 79%, so almost double what Donald Trump's is. I think Reagan had one of the lowest ones going back over the last 6 or 7 presidents, and his was 58% when he took office in 1981. So really, there is nothing like this, and Trump can obviously say that the polls are rigged, and maybe polls are off by a little bit here and there, and in tight, election contests and swing states, yes, those polls can get the outcome wrong. But when you're looking at something as stark as this, a president-elect whose approval rating is 40%, whose disapproval rating is 54%, and they haven't even done anything as president yet, that's really telling about where we're at right now in our politics and some of the challenges that this administration is going to face going forward.
Absolutely. Eli Stokols, as always, my friend, we thank you.
Thank you.